It's very common for folks that are trying to get their first cloud role to get stuck along the way. They don't understand why they aren't progressing and get very frustrated with the process. Welcome to the Get in the Cloud podcast. My name is Coin. Today I want to dive deeper into the process of getting your first cloud role, talk about some of the common areas where you can get stuck and the strategies you should use to power through to the next level. The starting point in this process, of course, is to get good. You need to level up your profile, add new skills and abilities through projects and training, achieve certifications in line with the role you want, join and utilize networking and community that's going to guide you through the process and help you along the way. I went through this process in more detail in the previous episode called Zero to Hero, but this is where you should be starting with the process. And the first guidepost that you'll run into is recruiter interviews. So stuck point one is you're not talking to recruiters. You're not getting any recruiting interviews. The question is why? Why aren't you talking to recruiters? Why aren't you having those initial conversations with recruiters? And really at this point, it's you're not networking. You're not going to meetups. You're not utilizing your community. Maybe your LinkedIn profile or your presence isn't very good. You haven't done any relevant projects. You're not leveling up your skills. You don't have certs. So you should be, if you're following the process and you're working through it, you should be talking to recruiters on a regular basis. Now, these can be recruiters for roles that you're interested in and recruiters for roles that you're not interested in. I would recommend that you take every interview you can get, even if you're not particularly interested. I talked a little bit about that in my interviews episode. You should be practicing your interviews. But if you find that you're not talking to recruiters, it means that you have not leveled up your skills and abilities enough. You are not utilizing your network sufficiently to be able to gain access to those individuals. You're not highlighting those things on your LinkedIn so that you're coming up on searches, and you don't have the relevant certs that are triggering those kinds of search algorithms that the recruiters use to find people that would be a good fit for the role. When you do get to start talking to recruiters, you get past that stuck point, you should be prepared for the discussion and especially for the salary discussion. If you have the opportunity to do mock interviews, you should definitely do it. Practice will help you to be less nervous. You'll want to prepare for the interview overall, but probably the hardest part of the interview with a recruiter is going to be the salary discussion. So stuck point two is that you're not getting past the recruiter. So you have the call with the recruiter. You should have a good estimate of how the discussion is going. But if you don't get moved on to the next phase, then that means you're getting stuck at the recruiter. So at the beginning, I would say you should ask for feedback. Some recruiters will ignore you and ghost you. Some recruiters will give you honest feedback. You need to do research. You need to make sure your skills are right. If you're whiffing questions in the kind of base questions in the recruiter interview, remember the recruiter is likely not technical. So if you can't answer questions that even a non-technical person is asking, then you need to up your skills and ability. You need to up your capabilities to have the conversational discussion and things like that. You need to check on and maybe re-up how you're handling the salary discussion. Are you somehow disqualifying yourself based on the salary discussion? Are you presenting yourself well? So I have a number of recommendations that I put in my interviews episode, and you should watch that or listen to that as well. So the next guidepost, of course, if you're making it past the recruiter interview, is then to get into the company interviews. So the same as before, you should be preparing directly for the interview on the technical side. So the next stuck point would obviously be you're not getting past the technical interviews. And I would say the same recommendation again. You need to ask for feedback. You need to be asking what their impression is. Hopefully you're connecting with the people who are interviewing you on LinkedIn, and you're able to kind of ask for some candid feedback if you got passed over. And you'll want to listen to what that feedback is. If you're mismatched for the role you're applying for, Are you too nervous in the interview? What questions are you struggling with? And it could be that you're just not a good fit for the companies that you're interviewing with. Sometimes one thing that can happen is you, through your relationships, you get yourself into an interview where you're just very underqualified, right? Maybe the company does not really have a role that's a good fit for a junior person, and they interview you for a mid-tier role. Obviously, it's going to be a big stretch for you to take that role on, but that's okay. You're getting interview experience, and a good role will come along that's a good fit for you. But you do need to get feedback from the individuals that you're connecting with, that you're interviewing with. Try to get feedback in the interview and then work to get feedback afterwards as well. Once you get past the interview stage, so let's say you improve that, you get past the technical interviews, then you're going to go back to the finishing of the negotiation with the offer and the acceptance. And I don't think most folks get stuck here, but you should be good to go once you get to that point. But I would recommend that before you go into each different interview, that you take time to review strategies and videos about how to successfully navigate difficult questions about where you're going to work and when you're going to work, and find out more information about the role and really dig in during the interview phase. Now, the next spot might be, hey, I've tried that, it's not working. It's been 2 weeks, I've tried that, it's not working. I would say you need to still stick with it. Some people get lucky; they're going to find a role very quickly. Others, it can take months to get through each step of the process. Growth is going to take time. You need to lean in, and as much as you probably hate to hear it, you want to enjoy the process. Learning about IT, growing, training, doing projects. If you hate that now, you're going to hate doing it for a living as well. So maybe that's a signal to you that maybe this isn't the right fit for you, but don't get frustrated. This is the process. And you could be in a situation where it's a down market. You could be in a situation where it's an up market, and it could take you one day to find a role. It could take you weeks and months. But the process is the process. You're going to have to keep working that process. As you fail at getting those interviews and fail at interviewing with those folks, just take it as additional motivation to continue to grow your skill set, to continue to do projects, to continue to network and get to know people. Don't burn any bridges, right? If someone says that you're not a right fit, it's a great time to say, well, what would I need to have to be a good fit? In your opinion, I'm continuing to improve. Whatever they tell you that you should be working on, then you work on that. If, and this may be a little bit controversial, but if a company asks you to do a project or like a take-home test or something like that before you get hired, I think you should do it. There are people online that's like, oh, you shouldn't do work for free. But this is a perfect example of a project that the company finds valuable. They're telling you something that is a skill set that's interesting to them. It's likely, if it's interesting to them, it's interesting to other companies as well. So the only caveat is, I would say, if you agree to do this, that you license it for yourself. You put an Apache license on it. You post everything that you do for them publicly on GitHub. So you're not going to do work and then give it to them privately. I would just say, yes, I'm happy to do this project for you, but I post everything that I do publicly on GitHub. Is that okay with you? And they should be fine with it. So you can do that work. Just, they may not want you to let everyone know that this was a question from their interview, but you can post all of that and save it in your GitHub and then share it with them. And then it just becomes another project point when you go into the next interview. Let's say you don't get the job with this company, you go into another interview and they ask you, have you ever done X, Y, and Z? And you can say, yes, actually I have done this. I was able to successfully complete that project and deliver it. Would you like to look at the work that I've done? And so on and so forth. So it's all valuable in terms of experience, but it takes time. If someone told you were going to go from waiting tables to being a cloud engineer in 5 weeks or something, it's going to take time. Turning your life around and totally changing your career takes time. It takes a lot of time. So you need to invest. You should imagine that you're going to invest a year or more in this process. Will it take that long? Probably not for most people. But if you're committed to a long-term growth strategy to be able to turn your career around, then you'll reset your expectations that keep you from feeling distraught and somewhat dejected because it's not happening as fast as it happened to someone else. Don't worry about what other people are doing or how fast it happened to them. They may have a buddy that works in the industry, or maybe their mom or dad got them an in at the company, right? So you're not them. Just focus on you, focus on improving your skills, doing your projects, getting additional certs, working your network. That's the things that are going to matter. So the next stuck point, you got an offer, but the pay sucks. Okay, well, join the club. Your first job, the pay always sucks. Some people get lucky with big pay out of the gate. I know when the market was really tight, there were people that were walking into $125,000 roles right out of the gate. I could tell you, as a person who does hiring, I'm not going to hire a junior at that rate because I can find a mid-tier or a senior tier person at that rate. So I'm looking as someone who is a hirer to get somebody in that I know I'm going to invest time in. I know they're not going to be as valuable. I'm not going to be able to bill them out as a consultant to a client at a really high rate. So I'm looking to get somebody on the cheap, and what they get in exchange is all the skills and ability. They're going to train and learn on my dime. They're going to have access to me and my experience, access to a team that's going to gather around and help them to grow. And that's really where you want to be. So if you have an offer and the pay sucks, what you really want to be looking at is this role going to help me grow? Is this going to give me the critical experience that I need to make my career grow? And then you just buckle down and work it. It's okay, right? The upside for these roles is very high. I think we all know, a DevOps engineer, cloud engineers, they make six figures, right? And it doesn't take you long to get to that point, maybe a year or two, depending on how fast and how aggressive you are personally. But once you get the job, you're on the track. Like the train is on the tracks, and you're going to that destination now. And so it's almost an inevitability unless you derail it for some reason. Okay, stuck point 6. I got a job in the cloud. I'm not actually doing anything cloud related. So, I've seen this happen a couple of times where folks will do a bunch of cloud training. They do DevOps training, and they get a role, and maybe it's a FinOps role, right? In FinOps is a little bit like accounting in some cases, if you're on the reporting engine side of the work. So it's a lot of spreadsheet work, and it can feel very anti-cloud. Like it doesn't feel like you're really doing any of the work that you trained to do. And so then you have to consider a couple of things. You have a couple of options. One is, if the pay is good and the title is good, like if you're a cloud FinOps engineer and the pay is the same or better than what you were making before, then you want to look at, am I going to be able to learn from the people here about everything else in cloud that I'm interested in doing? You've really set yourself a baseline. Again, the train's on the tracks. Now you work in IT. So whereas before, maybe you were a waiter and you're a waiter trying to get into IT, that's a huge jump for people mentally. But if you're a cloud FinOps engineer and you want to be a cloud DevOps engineer, that feels like a pretty easy transition for people to understand. Even certainly even more inside of your own company, right? And so I would say, if you can afford it, right? If the pay sucks and the job isn't what you wanted and the company kind of puts you on an island and you don't feel like there's any growth there, then yeah, you'll want to start to grow and look for something else. Okay, definitely. But if you're at a company where they're going to pay for you to do training, they're going to pay for you to get cert, they're going to pay for your certs, maybe they give you a bonus for getting certs, right? You're going to have access to the cloud providers themselves. So you'll have access to AWS reps and things like that. You're going to have access to other engineers in the company that are doing DevOps and things like this. You can start to grow within the company exactly as you did outside of the company. You do training, you increase your certifications, you network inside your company and get to know the people in those departments. and then you could laterally move into their departments, or you could leave the company in 1 to 2 years and look to switch to a role that's going to be more in line with the technology that you're interested in. But I would say take the time, kind of soak it up. If you're coming from outside of cloud and you're getting into cloud, what you're going to find is that a lot of the roles have a different flavor to them. You might find that the work you're doing, maybe it isn't what you thought it was going to be, but it might be interesting. And I can tell you, like, for instance, FinOps is a great example. FinOps has a line that leads up to the finance side of the business. So you could easily end up doing cloud FinOps. You could end up being in the FinOps department. You could end up in cloud management, finance management for cloud. I mean, it's interesting how some of these other roles could lead you into management and executive positions that you might be interested in doing more so than DevOps or something else. So just keep that in mind. I would say if it's an opportunity to grow where you're planted, because you don't know what tomorrow will hold. The economy could turn on a dime, the market could be down, and then you could be stuck trying to be the new guy who's a junior in a DevOps team, potentially first on the chopping block. So those are a couple of the guideposts that you should be looking for as you go through this process, a couple of the places where you would typically get stuck. And I would say work the process. You kind of know what you need to do already. If you're not getting traction on any step, you just need to go back and keep working on the previous steps until you get good traction on the steps moving forward. And as you get traction on each steps, you keep working on each one as you grow into new roles. Maybe you're stuck in a spot that I haven't considered or I didn't talk about today. Just leave a comment on this podcast, and I'll take a look and respond to your comments and hopefully answer all those questions.
All right, you made it to the end of the episode. Great job. Be sure to follow this podcast for more great episodes. I release a new one every week. I created this podcast to help people just like you with the secrets to jumpstarting their cloud career. But I need your help. Please rate and review this podcast on Spotify or Apple. And of course, share this with anyone you know that is also on this journey as well. Thanks again for listening. Let's get into cloud.